Good evening and welcome to the Pima Community College District March 10th, 2021 regular governing board meeting via Zoom. Our first item, I'm going to call the meeting to order, and our first item of business is the roll call. Mr. Sylvan, if you could read the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Catherine Ripley.
Here.
Damian Klinko.
Here.
Maria Garcia.
Here.
Meredith Hay.
Here.
Luis Gonzalez.
You're muted.
Here.
Great. All board members are present, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. The next item is our public comment and call to the audience. We have a number of requests to speak this evening. So I'm going to just remind everyone that Pima Community College Governing Board welcomes public comment on issues within the jurisdiction of the college. Generally, the total time for public comment will be limited to 45 minutes and comments will be limited to 3 minutes per individual. These time limits may be modified by the board or board chair. Individuals sharing comments are expected to communicate with decorum and respect. Individuals who engage in disorderly conduct or who use divisive or insulting language may have their time reduced or concluded by the board chair. At the conclusion of the public comment, individual board members may respond to criticism made by those who address the board, may ask staff to review a matter, or may ask that a matter be put on a future agenda. Members of the board, however, may not discuss or take legal action on matters raised during the public comment unless the matters are properly noticed for discussion and legal action. Finally, be advised that internal college processes are available for students and employees for communication. So the first, let me just pull up the list. So our first member of the audience this evening is Mary Esther Rosales. Ms. Rosales? Is Ms. Rosales here? Okay, we can try to come back to Ms. Rosales a little later. Next, we have Bogoshak. Matej, are you there?
Oh, wow. What's going on?
Good evening, everybody. Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
Just turn on my mic.
Looks like we got a note from Mary Esther, so we can.
I had to mute Mary because of the feedback there.
Okay, so first let's start. Matej, are you there? We'll start with you and then we'll move next to Ms. Rosales and then Amy Feldman.
Yes. Hello, everybody. Is that better?
Yes, that's better.
Oh, what's going on?
Okay, so I think, Matej, we're going to move on to the next person. Maybe we could go on to Mary Esther Rosales, and then we can try to come back to you at the end. Ms. Rosales?
Yeah, I believe the feedback is coming from Mary Esther and not from Matej.
Okay, so let's move on to Amy Feldman.
I think you can go back to Matej because Matej was not the problem.
Okay, Matej.
Thank you, everybody. Good evening, Chair Klinko, Chancellor Lambert, board colleagues and guests. My name is Matej Bogoshak. I teach mathematics here in Pima, and I serve as president of PCCA. I wanted to sincerely thank everybody for all the work and important discussions at the board meetings over the last couple of months, the regular and study sessions in this highly volatile but hopeful year. Mr. Klinko, thank you for challenging us to be bold, in your words, and work harder to reach those students we've lost and have yet to reach, or can better serve to turn this enrollment problem of ours around. Ms. Ripley, your steadfast focus on community needs has been clear and unmistakable from the start. And thank you for emphasizing it's not just about the marketing, but the product itself, and investing in the employees who recruit and retain and support our students. Ms. Garcia, thank you for being so engaged and speaking out for our students and asking many, many important questions from issues with the registration process, for example, to various college contracts. That's what oversight is all about. Dr. Hay, you always keep us pragmatic and look out for threats, and we really appreciate that. And Mr. Gonzalez, you've been a vocal advocate for your constituents and our students, and have suggested various ways that Pima can reach out for them. We are truly on the same team here, all of us, trying to pull our college and students through this difficult time, while building a foundation for the future. So also thank you, Chancellor Lambert, for being such a champion for Pima throughout our community and beyond. To Dr. Richmond, Dr. Sovak, and the whole strategic planning team for the great presentation and thoughtful work on our mission at the study session last month. And thank you, Dr. B, the finance staff and the committee advising you on the use of federal funds for all the careful planning in a budget year like no other. There's really too many people to name and thank here, but allocating our resources in line with our mission and values is one of the most important responsibilities we have. And so as the 2021-22 budget takes shape over the next couple of months, please remember the employees who've been asked to do more and work harder than ever before, haven't received a raise in 7 years, something that I believe has never happened in the history of Pima, and whose base pay has not been keeping up with inflation. Our K through 12 colleagues have made some significant progress. Our city workers are now paid at least $15 an hour, and I think it would really do wonders for employee morale, productivity, retention, and goodwill to acknowledge their long-term efforts with more than just words. The Employee Representative Council continues its work to revise and improve personnel policies, and we are starting the annual discussion on compensation this Friday. We would really appreciate, as employee representative groups, as well as the AERC, an opportunity to report back to the board in April on this topic, and just the state of the meet and confer process overall. So thank you again very much for your time, for your service to the college, and don't hesitate to contact me if you have any questions. Good evening.
Thank you very much, Matei. And Chancellor Lambert, I think that's a great idea to get an update on the meet and confer in April, if that's possible, or at an upcoming meeting. Next, let's hear from Amy Feldman. And while we're waiting for Ms. Feldman, Ms. Rosales, if you turn off any other streaming of the meeting on YouTube or any other open windows, that may be causing the feedback loop. You should just have one window open. Ms. Feldman? Is Ms. Feldman here?
She is. It looks like she's muted.
Ms. Feldman, if you could unmute yourself. Okay, we'll come back to Ms. Feldman. Next, we have Benny Gomez, followed by Adilis Felix. Mr. Gomez? Is Mr. Gomez with us?
I do not see Mr. Gomez in the attendees.
Okay. Adilis Felix?
Or Mr. Felix.
How about Brad Campbell?
Brad is listed and he is now allowed to talk.
Okay, Mr. Campbell. You're on. Mr. Campbell?
Hello. This is Brad Campbell. I was actually just typing in the chat. I'm sorry. The mute button just appears whenever you call on us. So maybe that is possibly why. others were not able to unmute at that time. So that's a good feature. Anyway, I have communicated several times with the chancellor. And so I actually just want to thank the board for coming to the conclusion today that we would be able to initiate and start indoor athletics. I know this has been a very trying time, and basically trying to find all the data that's out there and assimilate that into one specific document to be able to follow. So I really just want to applaud the efforts and make sure that everyone is aware of that fact, that this is a very difficult process. I mean, I work in this on a daily basis and deal with COVID from all directions as an ER physician. So again, I just want to applaud everyone on their efforts, and it is difficult and quite frustrating even for us on the outside to, I guess for lack of better words, I mean, I just get very frustrated with the following the science statement that typically gets thrown out there and is now the new in vogue verbiage for every conversation that takes place. So just happy you're able to move forward. So really, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Stacia Ely, E-L-Y.
She is present, is just muted at the moment.
Ely? Is she still with us?
She is still there, just still muted.
Ms. Ellie, you need to unmute your. Okay.
Damien, she just typed in a message saying she just prefers to listen.
Okay. Malika Hayes.
Hi, thank you so much for having me tonight. My name is Makayla Hayes. I'm the PCCA Vice President and new AERC co-chair. I saw that AP 1.01.03 is on the information agenda tonight, and it states that stakeholder meetings were held and input solicited. If the policy is headed for posting tonight, I'm asking that the board ask the Chancellor and Legal Office to take this back for collaboration and discussion before the AP is finalized and posted. This AP was presented to Faculty Senate in December as part of a 21-day comment. At that time, faculty raised questions and concerns about the implications of this AP as written. The ACC pulled the AP for further discussion with stakeholders, and while one discussion with the sponsoring unit followed at an ACC meeting, no further discussions involving faculty or the ACC occurred throughout the subsequent minor revision process. The multi-departmental collaborative editing process mentioned in the information item tonight did not include the very people who raised concerns and got the AP pulled in the first place. Shared governance ensures that this policy will be something that works well for the college. We do have examples of APs that have gone through the review process and come out as stronger and better policies for employees and students at the end because stakeholder input and collaboration were valued. We hope that this policy can go through this process to become the policy we hope it can be. While typically by the time a policy comes to the board as an information item, there is either limited concern or issues remaining, or the remaining issues are philosophical difference in how discrepancies should be resolved. This particular information item is misrepresenting to the board what has happened so far during the policy review process, and the item as stated implies input gathering and collaboration had occurred when it truly had not up to this point. This is not the only time faculty have felt this way about their quote unquote involvement at the college, but as it has gone this far, as this process has gone this far, this would make this one of the most blatant examples of performative input gathering. Genuine stakeholder input is essential for employee morale and for a college and for a college aspiring to be premier. This lack of transparency and shared collaboration related to this policy does not embody the expectations of what I believe this board has for the college. Thank you for listening, and I ask you to hold the administration to a higher standard of stakeholder engagement prior to key decisions being made that will affect employees and students.
Okay,
Mr. Chair, if I might. So while I would disagree with the description of the process that's been provided, I've had an offline conversation with Josie Milliken, the faculty Senate president, and agreed that we're going to delay posting the final version of this until I've had a chance to clarify some of these issues with her. Okay, and Ms. Hay, could you just repeat to me one more time the AP number that you have a concern about?
1.01.03.
0.03. Okay. Okay. And then, Mr. Sullivan, would we need to take action to? I mean, it's for information only. So, I mean, so it's really just for informing the board and the college that it's moving through the process. So you're going to, Chancellor Lambert, you're going to take a look at this and see what we can do to re-engage.
There seems to be a lot of misunderstanding and some miscommunication about what the facts are related to the process that was followed. So we're going to clarify that before we post what will be the final version.
Okay, I think.
And then if we need to make revisions, we can figure out a process for that.
I think it would be good to have as an information item, and maybe at the next meeting, an explanation of how this process works and where the opportunities for input is and what broke down with this particular one. Okay, if that's possible at the next meeting. Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Hayes, for bringing that forward. I do want to give, I believe Amy Feldman was here to speak and wasn't on the line.
Hello.
Hello.
Okay. Hello to the Pima County College Board and Chancellor. I'm calling today to bring up the issue of Joseph Morgan and his employment at the college with the downtown campus Upward Bound program. Joseph Morgan is a far-right zealot who supported, attended, and championed the January 6th insurrection riot at our US Capitol in Washington, D.C. Since then, he has posted public pictures on Facebook about his attendance at the Capitol riot. He has gone on local talk shows to discuss his attendance at the Capitol riot. He continues to champion his attendance and that of others, and he also continues to spread the big lie that Joe Biden lost the election and that Donald Trump is still president. Morgan also proudly lists Pima Community College as his employer on his Facebook profile. Is this a person that the college really wants representing them? He has advocated for violence online and on talk shows and continues to call for more events like the Capitol riot. This is not a man who should be working in the public education, let alone with the young and impressionable students at Amphi, Flowing Wells, and Rincon High Schools that the Downtown Upward Bound program serves. With Upward Bound being funded by a grant from the US Department of Education, it makes more of a problem that Joseph Morgan is being directly paid by the federal government that he plotted and attended a riot to overthrow. This is unacceptable. No one that plots to overthrow the government should be making a living off that government. This is the epitome of white privilege. I was part of a group of people that emailed and called the college to notify them of the danger posed by Mr. Morgan. Our concerns were met with a tone-deaf or obtuse email from Dr. Irene Robles Lopez that downplayed our concerns and stated that Joseph Morgan was merely engaging in free speech protected by the First Amendment. The First Amendment is not an absolute. It does not protect all speech in all instances. It protects one from going to jail for their speech. It does not protect them from public ridicule or from being fired from a public employment position. Attending a riot that intended to overthrow the federal government is not free speech, it's anarchy. Whether Morgan entered the building or not is irrelevant. He was on the public grounds of the Capitol, as his pictures online show, and I believe he would have entered the building had he been at the front of the mob. All this, and he continues to list Pima Community College as his employer on his Facebook page. Our only community college in Tucson deserves better. Our school children at Amphi, Flowing Wells, and Rincon deserve better. Thus, I am asking again, is this the type of person Pima Community College wants representing them? I kindly and respectfully ask that you do something before Mr. Morgan acts out violently again. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comment. Next, we'll try to re-engage Mary Esther Rosales one last time. Ms. Rosales? You just need to unmute and make sure there are no other windows with the YouTube channel on.
Okay, can you hear?
We can.
Can you hear me now?
Please go ahead. You have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Hello. My name is Mary Esther Rosales, and I'm calling today to bring up the issue of Joseph Morgan. His actions on January 6th at the Capitol building in Washington, D.C. were not professional and did not display a good example of the leadership that was required and expected from a support technician at Pima Community College. He supports violence online and on a talk radio and continues to call for more events like the Capitol riot. I understand he has the right under the First Amendment. However, his actions did not fall under the First Amendment. Attending a planned riot that intended to overthrow the federal government is not free speech. His actions should be investigated by the FBI and also by this Pima College board, and appropriate action should be taken. This is surely not a man that should be working in public education. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comment. And finally, the last person will try Benny Gomez again.
He's not listed currently.
Okay, so that concludes the public comment. Thank you very much for taking the time to share with us your concerns. The next item on our agenda is item 1.4, remarks by the governing board members. And I have nothing to report at this time.
I have nothing at this time.
Ms. Garcia. Oh, you're muted.
Well, I want to thank everybody for attending and hope everybody stays safe, gets their vaccinations, and hopefully we'll come back to the college and everything will open up again. Looking forward to the day. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Gonzalez. Mr. Gonzalez, you're muted. You just have to.
Nothing to report today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And finally, Ms. Ripley.
Hi, yes, thank you so much everyone for attending. I just want to report it's my second month on the job, and I had a wonderful tour of the facilities, the newest Center of Excellence for automotive production, and was really impressed. It was great to see the downtown campus still under construction, but looking really good, and I'm really excited for the day when the students can all return. I do miss teaching, but I'm glad to be here. A lot going on. I think that I really want to give strong kudos to the champions of the school, who are the faculty and the staff and the students, for plowing through this last year. It's been exactly a year since we went to remote online teaching, and it's been tough. Everybody's been a trooper. Everyone from the people that have to stay home with their kids and take classes and teach classes. I'm really proud of Pima Community College for doing it well. And from what I've been researching, doing it a lot better than a lot of community colleges. So not that it's a competition, but I really wanted to thank everybody, and I'm really proud to be here. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ripley. Next, we have our item 2.1 for reports. We have our administrative reports. We have 35 minutes set aside, and I'm going to just let everybody know that about a minute before the presentation time is over, I'll just give you a heads up that the time is coming to a close. So it looks like the first item is our Office of Dispute Resolution, ODR, update with Ross and Marty, investigators for ODR. Chancellor Lambert, you want to give a little introduction?
Yes, so we're so pleased to present to the board an update on the operation of our ODR. And just for background for some of the board members who were not part of the board at the time, this was a new system we put in place in response to the numerous complaints that the college had received many, many years ago, as well as part of our HLC resolution as it relates to complaints. So you're going to hear tonight just some of the complaints that we receive and how they're resolved. So I'll turn it over to Ross.
Ross, and you have 10 minutes.
Hello, everyone. I'll be starting. My name is Martina Macias. I go by Marty. I started my career as a civil rights investigator in 1997. I've been with Pima College's Office of Dispute Resolution for 2 years. Our offices are located on the second floor at the district office, which we have not been in for a year, which is okay, because the students, the employees, and any member of our community are still able to contact us to file complaints, make inquiries, lodge concerns, or even make suggestions by all but one of the methods that we've had in place for many years now. And that is that they can call us directly to a main line that we have in our office, 206-4686, for which we have made sure we have a voice over internet protocol set in place so that if anyone does call that empty office, we will get that message if they leave it. They can also submit complaints or inquiries through our dedicated resolution@pima.edu email. They can also file reports using the hotline by going online to the compliance and ethics hotline, or even by calling a toll-free number, both of which offer the individual an option to remain anonymous if they so choose. I think I might have already said it, but I'll repeat it. We serve employees, students, and any member of the community. We take and assess complaints either about equal employment opportunity discrimination from current or prospective employees. We take student complaints that range from grade issues to also to allegations of discrimination. We forward Title IX issues regarding sex discrimination to the Title IX coordinators, but we're also available to conduct the investigation of those complaints if we are asked to do so. We assess and process employee grievances as well. Anything that doesn't fall into those categories, the anything else category, is also something that comes through our office. All of those processes, all of those functions are managed or tracked in our Ethics Point database, which we also use to prepare our quarterly report showing the statistics regarding types of complaints, looking for any patterns that may exist, and looking at solutions for those. All of those things that I've mentioned are managed by me and the other individual in the office. Actually, I forgot to say that I'm an advanced analyst. I'm the investigator there. And the other individual is my coworker, Ross.
Thank you, Marty. So I'm going to be providing some historical context for everybody today. We only have short time, so I'll be sharing some historical context, and then I will be showing a couple slides with some statistics. I'm going to try to get through this material quickly so that I can answer any questions. So ODR is a product, or ODR has come as a result, rather, of an HLC recommendation in part to provide a entity that could provide clear information regarding and receiving complaints and grievances from all constituents of the college. 2 committees were formed for that task, and subsequently the committees proposed a plan to create an independent complaints and grievance entity for all complaints for the college. This entity was to serve as a central repository for these complaints, a place that can be triaged, and you could have the investigative component to it, the reporting, and then the records retention all in one central location. On February 7th of 2014, Chancellor Lambert approved that plan, and then by July of 2014, the Office of Dispute Resolution was instituted at Pima Community College. Next slide, Marty. Here are some of our numbers. This is from 2015, fiscal year 2015 through fiscal year 2020. And you'll see that our total number of complaints for 2015 was about 115 complaints. We average about 100 complaints per fiscal year. In fiscal year 2020, we got real close to hitting that 115 complaint mark. But the difference is that the student and employee complaint ratios flipped. If you look at the chart down below, it shows the different constituents and the number of complaints that came in per year. And when I was talking about, the number of complaints from fiscal year 2015 and fiscal year 2020 are very close. However, if you notice in fiscal year 2015, we had 73 employee complaints, whereas in fiscal year 2020, we had 79 student complaints. So that's reflective of what was happening at that time at Pima Community College. ODR in fiscal year 2015 was dealing with all the employee issues that stem from the whole reason of erecting ODR. And in 2020, we have the pandemic. And so those numbers changed. Now, one of the things that Marty and I do is we look for trends. And although we had a large spike in student complaints, there are no real trends. In the beginning with the pandemic, we did notice that there were some problems with the transition of going from in-person courses to an online modality, but those things quickly smoothed out. Next slide. Okay, this slide shows our outcomes and our findings. There are 10 different outcomes for any given complaint. I think what's important to really focus on this slide, though, is our substantiated or partially substantiated category for outcomes and findings. You'll see that it's a relatively low number in comparison to the total complaints that we have per fiscal year. I think the highest that we've had was about 22% of complaints that come in that are substantiated or partially substantiated. The rest of it is around 10% or below the rest of the years. So that's really our presentation. We wanted to leave some room for questions. We have any questions?
Are there questions? Ms. Garcia, I think.
Okay, so the ODR was what replaced meet and confer. Is that correct?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am. We didn't replace meet and confer. We are a separate entity that was stood up as a result of the HLC, in part as a result of the HLC recommendation to have a centralized repository for complaints.
Okay, so it's just the complaint process.
Correct.
Okay.
Sorry, if I might just to add to that. So the Pima College still has meet and confer. It's now through an organization or a group called the All Employee Representative Council that has membership from different aspects of different segments of the workforce at Pima, and that group deals with workplace and personnel policies and procedures.
My mistake.
Could you tell us a little bit just about, your sense of people's comfort with the current complaint process, or have you heard concerns about the existing complaint process and people's willingness to come forward if they have concerns that they, feel they need addressed?
Absolutely. One of the things that ODR has, we use a complaint management system called Ethics Point, and we have a true anonymous source to be able to take anonymous complaints through an online form or by telephone. So anybody who's uncomfortable coming forward has that resource. Now we haven't got any feedback that people are uncomfortable. Marty and I have about a 50-50 chance of somebody being unhappy with the process, just because there's, it's going to go one way or the other, and somebody's not going to be completely happy with the end result. It's rare that we have both parties happy with the end result of an investigation. The feedback that we get most of the time, more often than not, is positive feedback. Positive feedback in that, hey, we really helped us, accomplish what we were looking to get done here through this complaint. It's rare that we get negative feedback. However, there has been some negative feedback, and that is usually filtered through Jeff Sylvan, who then, sits down with folks and says, okay, what is it exactly that you don't like about the ODR process? Oftentimes it's more of, we don't like the end result than the process itself.
And can you tell us, so if someone is making an anonymous complaint, they can make a call or they can go through your portal, and then what information do they need to provide? What level of information needs to be provided that you can then take the complaint seriously and actually conduct an investigation, so it doesn't just get put as a side, like not enough information?
So the main thing we look for, obviously, is going to depend on the group that complaint or inquiry is coming from, right? So for example, if it's a student and they're complaining about a specific course, we want to make sure that we're verifying that we're actually speaking with that student. So we ask that they communicate with us through their Pima College email. We ask for their identification number, and then specifically we want to know the details of the complaint. What class is it? Who's the instructor? Have you? We try to determine whether that person is aware, first of all, that there's an informal process that begins that complaint, and whether that's been followed. There's so many different variables that it's difficult to say, but we do need to know who's complaining, specifically what they're complaining, and then we determine whether what they're complaining about, if substantiated, would constitute a violation of a college policy. We rarely just say, hey, we don't have enough information, goodbye. We spend a lot of time trying to educate the person. Here's the policy, please refer to it. This is what we need. And we're patient. We wait and see if we get a response. If we don't, we follow up again. Hey, did it get resolved, or do you no longer need our assistance? It's not very common that we just close a complaint due to insufficient information.
Mr. Chair, if I might just add one other thing. If an individual really wanted to remain completely anonymous, they can. The system allows members of ODR to post questions through that portal, and for the person on the other side to communicate without an email address exchange. So if someone wanted to provide detailed information, this is when it happened, where it happened, the witnesses, et cetera, but didn't want to give their own identifying information, there is a way for that to happen through the system that would allow ODR have enough information to do some level of follow-up inquiry without having to know the specific identity of the complaining party. So that is possible.
Okay. Mr. Chair, I think it's important also to note that that anonymity comes with limitations on due process, and we recognize that up front. So we tell these people that, if it's an anonymous complaint, that there will be limitations because the person who's being accused has the right to know who's accusing and what's being said. So that's an important component of anonymous complaints as well that I think is important.
And then have any of the complaints just, so I mean, if somebody brings a complaint, is there a process where, you know, it doesn't come out in their direction, and then there's sort of a concern about retaliation? Is there a process, a follow-up process on that your office deals with, or what is our internal process for that? Does it get managed through your department?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I understand your question.
So somebody comes forward with a concern, it gets resolved, and then they feel that there's been some retaliation against them because they brought the complaint forward. Is there a process in your office to deal with that?
Right, actually, we start with advising a person that they are protected against retaliation if, for example, they've brought an allegation of discrimination. So it's part of that comfort that we were talking about earlier. We like to reassure people, hey, you know, it's okay if you do believe that you're experiencing something that is happening because you filed a complaint, you do have protection against retaliation. And if something occurs, you would be able to file a separate complaint specifically just about retaliation, which would then initiate a second investigation. So we talk to people about that at the beginning, sometimes during, and definitely at the end, especially if the outcome is that the allegations are unsubstantiated. We do remind them, you still have protection. If anything does happen, you have any concerns, call and let us know right away.
Mr. Chair, there's also a form that we use called our roles, rights, and responsibilities form. And all of that is outlined in that form that each participant gets, and they sign that form with that information on there.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you both of you for your work and your diligence in these investigations. Oh, it looks like Ms. Ripley has a question. I'm sorry, Ms. Ripley.
Yeah, just really quick, sorry. Could you describe what your relationship is, and if there is crossover at all with human resources? In most institutions, this would fall under human resources. Can you just very briefly describe the relationship, or if there is one, or if there is a crossover, or is it siloed?
It's a great question. And yes, we work hand in hand with HR. Typically, it's a handoff to the first line supervisor, you know, who's going to get our report in conjunction with employee relations, HR, to take the next steps per policy. So we work collaboratively with HR, however, independent of HR.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? None. Okay. And I would just reiterate that if anyone feels that they have, you know, are ending up in a situation that they feel uncomfortable, or they're being, you know, treated unfairly, or there's a violation of college policy, please come forward through our process. Notify, you know, the office through the portal. You know, this board doesn't tolerate bad behavior from anyone in this institution, and I think we've made that very clear year after year. So again, thank you for your work helping to resolve these issues, and we'll move on to our next item. The next is our mission update with Dr. Nick Richmond. Dr. Richmond, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair Klinko, members of the board, Chancellor Lambert, colleagues and guests. It's my pleasure to be here this evening to provide a very brief update on the status of the mission fulfillment review. I'll share my screen for just one moment. So shared on screen and available in the board packet are the current draft statements as they stand after the Futures Conference. As things currently look, we have good alignment around 2 of the statements. So there's one that we're still looking to make slight revisions to. So the purpose is generally fairly well accepted. We received some input through the Futures Conference, but nothing that really tipped us towards making changes in a particular direction. And when we asked the attendees whether they liked the statement, 74% of attendees said they did, 18% were neutral, and 7% disliked the statement, which is relatively good level of agreement because we have to know going into this, not everybody will like all of the statements. The vision statement has been collapsed into one statement as opposed to the three that we had. Now, based on the input we received, there was some somewhat polarizing language in some of the drafts. So about Pima being the first choice for education and the language about Premier Community College. Some people like that, some people felt strongly against it. So at the moment we have this, but we know this is an area that we need to work on because this isn't as aspirational as we might like it to be. And I very much welcome the board's input on how we might revise this statement. And if you like the language of Premier Community College or first choice for education. So we have that input as we move forward. The mission statement is an area where we need to do a little more work. Let me scroll through here and get the responses. So based on the Futures Conference attendees, about 56% of people liked this statement, 29% were neutral, and 15% disliked it. And that's not quite where we might want this to see. So we're not really comfortable that this is a good quality final draft yet. We did make a couple of minor revisions in here, primarily switching language from student to learner, which was supported through the conference input. But we're at the point now where we're taking a long, hard look at these subsections where we have every learner, every day, every goal. And we're not sure based on the input whether these need to stay or whether we need to collapse some of this into the summary statement. And at the end, I'll summarize what we're going to do next to gather more input as we work on a decision on that front. Then the final section is the behaviors. These were really well liked based on Futures Conference input. So let me see what the numbers look like. 80% liked the behaviors, considered them important, 19% were neutral, only one person who 1% at that point in time for the event disliked this statement. We did make some minor revisions based on input from a community member to specify employee here instead of the more general language that we had. And we also recently received input about innovate and changing the language so it's positive. So at the moment we have do not be afraid to take risks, but reframe that in the positive because these should be about positive behaviors and positive routes forward for the institution. So we will rework that section as well. But as it currently stands, these are the draft statements that we have. Now, one thing that we were struck by after the Futures Conference is we had very, very limited student input on these statements. So in particular for the mission statement, but really for the full framework, our plan is that the next step is we will take this to student groups to gather input from our students as we work to refine these statements. We will likely also roll updated statements into one of the Futures Conference events. So the community and attendees have another opportunity to comment on the drafts. And the intention at this point is that in April, Dr. Sobak and I will bring another summary report to the governing board, and then we will bring the final statements for approval in May. That will give us enough time to ensure we can get good student input before we submit statements for the board's final consideration. And with that, that's the update. And I would request input on the timeline that I suggested for this, and also invite your comments on these draft statements.
Are there comments from the board? I don't see anyone. I would say, I think, I really like the Premier Community College and the aspirational quality of that. I think it's something that the board, and we've heard stated over and over again, and I think it's important to retain it in the vision. So I would strongly support that. I think the timeline sounds good, but I want to make sure that the board really has opportunity at the next meeting. Maybe we schedule a little bit more discussion, that we really have sort of a last opportunity to dialogue. And I would ask that any board members who have any concerns about the language be in touch with Chancellor Lambert's office to get that to Dr. Richmond as soon as possible, so they can weave that in. Does that sound reasonable to everybody? Okay, thank you, Dr. Richmond. Our next item is our Reskilling and Recovery, Dr. Ian Rourke, Vice President for Workforce Development and Strategic Partnerships. Mr. Rourke. And you have 5 minutes for this presentation.
Is that showing correctly on your screen?
It's looking good to me.
Great. Thank you, Board Chair Klinko, Governing Board, Chancellor, colleagues, and guests. I'm very excited to give a brief update about what has been the Reskilling and Recovery Network update, or broadly Reskilling and Recovery update. When we talk about reskilling and recovery, we are in fact talking about a point in time with respect to the economic downturn that was caused by as a result of the pandemic, and that we are still feeling the effects of. We'll not go into great detail on the data points today, but we'll point some out, and also where you can find greater levels of detail with respect to what is now turning out for the community that we serve and the nation to be a K-shaped recovery. Reskilling and recovery for us at Pima Community College occurs at the national level, at the state level with Arizona, as well as the regional and local level. And we are very proud to report that at each of these levels, Pima Community College is not only involved, but is a thought and action leader with respect to various entities inviting Pima leadership to be a part of, and in many instances lead, the design of reskilling and recovery plans that impact both policy and new initiatives. We've talked many times before with respect to upskilling and reskilling presentations about the pandemic, and then how do we prioritize the problems caused by it. In many instances, we already had a real unemployment level that was not as good as the what we call headline unemployment. So right now, trending 6 to 7%, disengaged workforce is actually still upwards of 13% across the state of Arizona. Equally with the skills gap, we have too many individuals with high school diploma or less, while under the auspices of Achieve 60, which guides our strategic plan, economic development and growth in the state of Arizona and our community requires 60% or more of our eligible workforce having post-secondary attainment, up into and including an associate degree, industry recognized certificate, credential, or apprenticeship. We have not enough workers in Pima County and in Arizona in that what we call skills level or middle skills band that is the domain of our community colleges and for Pima Community College. 52% of the workforce is required to be at any of the levels that we offer and provide, whereas we are at 46% of the workforce having the credentials that we offer. Finally, we also know that in our community, automation was going to be displacing and or significantly altering 40% of the jobs in our own economy here in Pima County by 2028. And the negative impacts of the pandemic accelerated both the pressure that we had on wages and low wage jobs. And I forgot to mention that in Pima County, 50% of our workforce is at the median wage of $10 an hour. And that impacts 175,400 workers, according to the Brookings Institute, in our own community, our friends and neighbors that fall into the low wage categories. And the pandemic impacted people of color, single female-led households, and those in the low wage jobs the most. So the reskilling recovery efforts focus on economic development priorities, with data and a gap analysis, short-term interventions leading to a systems alignment, and then strategic initiatives at the programmatic level and policy level to address these negative impacts of the pandemic. For this presentation, jumping right to the recommendations of the state level Reskilling and Recovery Network report. The initiatives focus on systems alignment between the two state level systems that really have the breadth and depth to meet the needs of our working learners in this challenging time. That is our public workforce system, or Arizona at Work, and Arizona's community colleges, including Pima Community College. Focuses on reskilling and upskilling at scale, the expansion of early college models. In our state of Arizona, there are only 2 high schools that are full-fledged early college high schools, where high school students can earn an entire associate degree. Both of those are currently in Maricopa County, and there are policy reasons as to why that's the case, as an example. And also the expansion of the great work that Pima County, that Pima Community College is leading with the expansion of our iBest programs and our partnering with career and technical education so that individuals can earn that high school equivalency and a college credential at the same time. There are a number of policy things that are not, that the initiatives are not wholly dependent on, but can certainly help. For example, House Bill 2021, currently moving forward in the legislature, is responsive to removing the arbitrary cap on freshmen and sophomores in high school. And that is a key policy piece to allowing us to expand that early college high school model in CTE as an example. With the next steps, the state level report was released last week with a press release. In this PowerPoint, I do believe that you can still hit these hot links on the website. You can hit the press release as well as the full report and an executive summary of the report through these links. And we will also email those to Andrea to ensure that you have direct copies of those following tonight's meeting. The implementation plan now takes the recommendations and the policy recommendations and focuses for Arizona's community colleges on a 2 to 3 year strategic effort, sort of paralleling the university's new economy initiative, but that all 10 community college districts are focused on. There's already work underway, including some of the policies that I mentioned tonight and more. And Pima continues to be invited onto state and national level work groups that will continue to shape policy as well as practice with respect to unifying our public workforce system and the power of education and training that our community college brings to our community and the community colleges bring to our state. In addition, we will be having regional tours with each workforce board in partnership with the colleges and the Arizona at Work localities. And there is going to be, through Sun Corridor Inc., a local report that in many ways was informed directly by the state and national level work on reskilling and recovery. That is it for this brief version of the update. And if there are any questions, we are ready.
Are there any questions for Dr. O'Rourke? Okay, I don't see any. Dr. O'Rourke, thank you for all your incredible work. If you could please let us know when the regional tour is on the college campuses, we would certainly, I think the board would love to be in attendance and greet and welcome those workforce leaders. So again, thank you for all your work in this area and the update. Okay, next we have our robotics with Greg Wilson, Dean of Applied Technology. Mr. Wilson, you are up with 5 minutes.
Good evening, Chairman Klinko, members of the board, Chancellor Lambert, colleagues, students, and guests. Thank you for this opportunity to present a quick update on our AIT robotics and Industry 4.0 components of our AIT program. I know we throw Industry 4.0 around quite a bit, so to kind of provide some context in terms of the funding that we receive from the board and how we've used it, I just kind of want to give you a quick definition before we show how that impacts our employer partners and obviously our students. And then I'll share a couple of pieces of equipment that the funding the board provided allowed us to purchase, how we're putting that all together, and then I'll end with what's coming next. So Industry 4.0, basically, the easy definition is that it is the digitization of manufacturing. So you have equipment that shares information, usually wirelessly. And the point of it is to produce or manufacture a product more efficiently and with less waste. So, when we talk to employer partners tied to our AIT industry, they really focus on 4 things. First, of course, would be safety, cost, speed, and quality. So our AIT program, the very first step that all of our students go through is AIT 100, which is a safety class, and our students earn an OSHA 10 industry credential before they then move on to the next steps. Currently with our equipment in the AIT program, if you look at these different blocks of what it means to cover different aspects of Industry 4.0, we cover all of these blocks, but the last 2, augmented virtual reality and 3D printing, while we do have that equipment at downtown campus.
I'm sorry to interrupt. If you're sharing a presentation, we are not seeing it.
Oh. Thank you for letting me know.
Problem.
It looked like it came through. Thank you, Damien. How about now?
Yep.
All right. So quickly again, just kind of skipping through, these are the things we're going to cover quickly in 5 minutes. Again, 4.0, just connecting wirelessly and sharing information between equipment. When I mentioned the blocks, we have all of these covered in our current equipment. We just have not yet integrated the augmented and virtual reality or the 3D printing. So we're still working on putting that together. But the $500,000 in special funding that the board provided did give us quite a bit of some pretty cool stuff. And so we have 9 what are called universal robots, and these are collaborative robots. So it means that an employee working with this equipment can touch it, move it, and safely do so. The equipment will stop if the robot gets too close or something like that. We also have a KUKA robot in the lab, and then we also have an industrial robot, a FANUC robot. If you've been into the lab, you know that that one's behind glass because it is not a collaborative robot. If it swings toward you, it's going to hit you. So getting to these collaborative robots, you can see the different pieces that came with this purchase. The important pieces are the grippers, the suction, and then the one that's actually on the light blue piece to the right. You've also got vision. And so when you have cameras that are, taking in all the information of the production line, it provides our faculty and students a lot of information to analyze and then make wise decisions when it comes to improving a process.
Hey, Greg, what's the sense of scale in this picture?
This one, these come in 3 to 5 feet tall.
Oh, okay.
So with the 9 that we have, they're going to be stationed on tables throughout the lab.
Cool. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact, our faculty and staff were in training today. That was another aspect of the funding that we were able to cover. The cool piece, this is what's called a Robotino. So it's a wireless robot that will go between stations of the production process. We've benchmarked quite a few programs. And just to give you an idea of what our students will be working with, the lab in Reno, Nevada at Truckee Meadows Community College that we visited, when they set up their system, they had 2 Robotinos and they were getting in each other's way, right? So they would pick up a piece of equipment off a conveyor and both robots would show up at the same spot. So again, it's all about wirelessly communicating. One robot decided, you know what, I'm in the way. I'm just going to go stand over here by the wall. And the other one continued the process. The second robot figured out, and mind you, this is not faculty intervening. The robots figured this out themselves, realized it could be more productive doing another step in the production process. So we have one of these coming. Part of what I wanted to share was numbers in terms of increasing our footsie. Unfortunately, when our equipment was delivered, our Robotino and one of the stations were damaged in transit. So the company, of course, we didn't have to say anything. They're fixing it and it's on its way back to us. So we're still in the process of putting everything together. This is the station where the conveyor belts are included. So if you think about a company like Amazon or any of one of those large manufacturers, our students are really getting the pieces and parts, not just the technical know-how, but again, programming robots, analyzing the data that is coming through. And this carries across to so many different programs. We were speaking with workforce and logistics today because you think about, how that whole process goes together. Certainly same thing with business and IT, or obviously the autonomous operator certificate. So what's next for us is obviously getting the equipment in, but we are also going to continue to expand what we do with sensors and data acquisition. If I just jump back one, you kind of see how that's a modular system. We expect to buy a couple more stations, and that is specifically for AIT, but you also get things where you can put a robot next to one of the CNC machines in machining. And then of course there are tie-overs with CAD. just kind of skipping ahead again, we've been in talks with JTED. We have shared information about how our programs align. We met with them last week, and we'll be continuing this, especially as we start to return to campuses. There's certainly a lot of crossover within PCC, as I mentioned with workforce, business and IT. We're also doing a specific data analytics certification with another manufacturer that can affect healthcare in other areas. And of course, Ian mentioned IBEST. We have an IBEST cohort that has come through AIT, and we're hoping to do that again. Cybersecurity comes into play. And so we've been in contacts with UA faculty, and they want to participate once we're back to doing things normally. And then, of course, as far as the network goes, we do all of this in partnership with the Maricopa system and Central Arizona College. And even before the pandemic, when you look at internships and apprenticeships, we were attracting employers from across the country who were sending their technicians to us to learn these processes. And so the funding has been great. It's allowing us to expand and go into new directions. And we're just going to keep pushing. Again, sensors and data will be very important across a lot of different areas. Any questions?
So Greg, if I may, so can you just remind the board employment opportunities of your graduates in Pima County?
Yes. So faculty, we were actually talking about this earlier, and they checked within the last 30 days. There were, instrumentation, automation postings for construction, healthcare, manufacturing. Our students are working at companies like Raytheon, GW Plastics, precision engineering. It's all over the place.
Right.
Are there any other questions from the members of the board? Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Wilson. We really appreciate the update and keep up the great work.
We will. Thank you.
So, Damien, can I just ask Greg one quick question? Greg, when you go into the new building, what difference is it going to really make to have more of that space, given what these new additions of equipment and processes?
I would say a couple of things. One, I mean, if you've been in our space, you know how crowded and cramped it can be. So when we talk about adding extra modules to a CP line or a factory, currently we just don't have the space to do it. And we have 9 UR robots that are, on tables that are cramped next to each other. So the space will be one big thing. The other thing, when we describe the Center of Excellence and the Advanced Manufacturing Building specifically, it's a 3-story, 100,000 square foot makerspace. And so, faculty will be working together to crisscross across the floors, across departments. I mentioned AIT. You think about computer-aided design and designing processes and adding the 3D printing. That's all going to be spread across 3 floors. I mentioned U of A as a partner. For those of you who don't know, we partner with them on Design Day, which is a process that their senior engineering students take, and Pima students now participate in that process. So we will have pods where those engineering teams can come together and actually build products that solve industry problems. So, I mean, the building's just going to make a huge difference. I mean, obviously we're not waiting for that. We've already started these processes, but it's just going to be a really big draw. And we hope to do a lot more locally, obviously, but pulling companies in from national areas and then hopefully bringing them to Tucson to just improve our economy.
So Greg, can you, with the new space, are you able to teach more cohorts as well? Is your number of students coming through your program going to increase?
For sure. We've talked about doubling the number of, our enrollment and maybe tripling once we get to that point. You're all probably familiar with the Caterpillar or what we do with Raytheon. When it comes to the Applied Technology Academy, we could only run those classes on Friday mornings when there was space in the existing labs. But having the 12,000 square foot flexible industry training lab in partnership with Workforce and just drawing everybody in, we'll be able to schedule that type of training whenever we want to, in partnership with the industry. So yeah, it's going to make a huge difference. And I talked about the high schools. We know that number of students coming is limited, but we certainly want to make sure we do everything to capture them and set them on the pipeline to us, U of A, NAU, our 90/30 partnership. But really, we want to make sure we're bringing industry folks in and giving them, whether it's credit or short-term micro pathways, That's what it's all about for us.
Ms. Garcia, did you have a question?
Well, Meredith already asked the questions that I was thinking about. So yeah, increase in enrollment and who are the industry partners. So that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, and we're bringing some stuff back, like optics, which we haven't run in a while. So we look forward to partnering with Optics Valley. That's another link between JTED and us. So yeah, enrollment's going to go up.
All right.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wilson. Next, we have our enrollment update with David Ariano, Dean of Enrollment Management. You have 5 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Board Chair. I'll preface it with that I do not have any robots in my presentation, and that's definitely some great work by Dean Wilson there. So good evening, Chairperson of the board members, Chancellor Lambert, colleagues, and guests. I'm going to provide a brief update on or from enrollment management. And with that, I'm going to start off with our spring 21 enrollment. Exiting the 45th day census period, we still have our declines. But what I'm really excited to share with the board is that when we hone in and we specifically look at our second 8-week sessions, we are seeing an increase. And so the data is showing an increase compared to last spring. When we look at this increase, there's a variety of reasons and probabilities why, but one of the things we're looking at is we did modify some of the way we were scheduling classes for the spring in anticipation of possible reopenings. And it also could be attributed to changes in student behaviors. Maybe they were, trying our first 8-week sessions to get a feel for the modalities that we're offering. And then once they got that feel, they're continuing on to the second 8 weeks. So some of these increases are really being shown in programs around business, so bookkeeping, enrolled agent, some of our healthcare or health adjacent, such as like clinical research coordinator, veterinary technology. We're also looking at our computer and cyber areas, so computer programmer, systems administrator, digital arts, and then some of our transfer programs like liberal arts and associate of science. So definitely some promising information there as we progress into summer and fall enrollment. I also wanted to kind of just touch base on some of the events Student Affairs has been putting on. We're really gearing up for summer and fall enrollment, and we've started to produce and host events that are specific to high school student populations, our current students, and then just community members at large. And so looking just a few quick kind of highlights, our Access and Disability Resources just recently hosted an event for high schools and community members and organizations where we had over 120 attendees attend this virtual information session to talk about how we can support students as they transition to college and in that virtual or in-person environments. We've also began our series with the Sunnyside Unified School District, our Path to Pima session. So it's a series of 6 sessions where we break down the enrollment funnel and work with that school district to specifically work with students to get them into Pima. We also have our first year engagement series continuing to run with Connect You and Popcorn with the Program, but also real specifically, they've partnered with our financial aid office to promote, to conduct an event related to financial literacy. And that's going to be really important for our students, especially in these times when there's really, some financial hardships out there and making the most of their Pell Grant and Earn to Learn options that the financial aid office has provided. With that, before I pass it on to my colleague, James Palacio from Dual Enrollment, I will open it up for any questions or comments.
Are there any questions from the board? Ms. Garcia.
So what other schools will you be visiting besides Sunnyside?
So these are virtual sessions.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and keep in mind, we are doing sessions with all high school students. Some of those sessions are more on the individual basis. And so we as we do look to scale this out, we've essentially created this session for the Sunnyside Unified School District.
Well, it would be nice to try to get, Tucson High and NAMPHI and the Marana School District. something to take into consideration?
Yes, definitely. Like I said, the recruiters are working those events, and they do have those connections and events going on with all school districts right now.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions for David? No? Okay. Then we're going to move on to the next half of the presentation, which is the dual enrollment with James plus adios.
Thank you, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Is my presentation up and?
It's looking good.
All right, perfect. So good evening, Chairman Klinko, members of the board, Chancellor Lambert, colleagues, students, guests, and community members. Thank you for allowing me to present a snapshot of our growing dual enrollment program. So I first want to start out with how we broke it up in our districts. This is what it looks like for our headcount and enrollment for each of the districts. If we, and I'm going to show up I'm going to show a slide here in a little bit on our 5-year growth since 2017 and our 1-year growth in one of our slides, or the 2 years growth that that'll show since the time that you approved the budget for us to expand dual enrollment and the opportunities to what we have now. And we're very happy to see the progress that we're making. Also, we're also excited that we've started expanding our partnerships with other high schools, and we're expanding into charter schools now, and we're really trying to target a lot of the schools that we really didn't really participate in the past. And so those are our what I called 2 years ago our jumpstart schools, and those are the ones that we're really having some good results with as well. So this is what it looks like. And when you look at the enrollment, we should be hitting about 8,000 enrollment by the time it's all said and done at the end of this year. And the reason why that I say that is because right now we're still, fixing some site codes. We're still, we have to enroll a lot of our students manually. The department does. We don't have the online capabilities like the college because we have so many students and that we have to enroll, and there's only 5 employees that we really can process a lot of this. But it's good because it's personalized for us. So this is what it looks like. We've grown in 2 years that we've started this department, and I started at the college. We've grown over 120% of our enrollment. We've grown our FTSE over 120% as well. So when you look at our actual enrollment, this was a snapshot that was done on 3/7 on March 7th, and we have 7,747 enrollment that we've already processed. We got some STU 100 courses that are starting here shortly, and so those numbers at the end of this year will be added to that. So that's why I'm saying we're projecting to get closer to 8,000 or past 8,000 enrollment. When you look at just our 1-year enrollment from last year, we grew just in 1 year 61% of our enrollment and 65% of our FTSE just in that 1 year that we've been in existence as far as like a department for the college. We're very excited for this, and our schools are very excited as well because they have somebody that they can contact on a regular basis, whether it's calling me on my cell phone or texting me or emailing one of the dual enrollment members. We're available to them immediately, and we're very responsive to them. Our goal at the college is that we contact each school that we partner with at least once in 2 weeks. I know in the past the goal was to meet with them once a semester, but that's not enough when it becomes dual enrollment because there's so many things that are happening. So we're really proud of the work that we're doing. So this is what I wanted to show you, our 5-year trend from the 2017, from the start of the strategic plan to ending it now, is we've grown 365% of the enrollment. That's very impressive to us, and my team didn't even realize that we even grew this much just in the 2 years that we've been together because they've been so busy trying to process all the students and testing and virtual assessments, which takes a lot of time. But I'm very proud of the work that they've done, and the team that we've put together to really accomplish this has been great for us. Our dual enrollment, just the headcount portion of it, we've grown 330% in the 5 years of this strategic plan. So just some great numbers that we are really proud of, but we're not done. We still have some schools that we have to work with. We still have some outside partnerships that we have to make sure that we solidify. And we're really trying to work out the language and agreements to make sure that we have reached all of our schools in this county. There's over 100 schools that we have to tap into. We have over 70 partnerships that we've already have established at this point. So are there any questions from the board at this point?
Are there any questions? Okay. Oh, yes, Ms. Garcia?
I was just going to say thank you. Great job. I'm very impressed with it. Thank your team.
Appreciate it. Thank you. I will. And I hope that they're watching tonight. I did invite them so that because I wanted to give them kudos. They've done an excellent job. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
I want to echo that. Could you tell us, I have two questions. One, do you have any idea of how much larger the program really can get, the dual enrollment?
So the way that we're looking at in the next 2 years, actually, the next year, we're projecting of hitting the 10,000 enrollment mark. Just because of the new course selections or course requests that are coming in, it looks like we can possibly hit the 10,000 mark. Now, keep in mind with the early college and the concurrent enrollment students that we have right now participating, that's including early college, we're already over 10,000 students collectively. But just dual enrollment by itself, we should be able to get at the 10,000 mark next year. At the end of next year. If not, for sure, we should be in the surpassing that by fall of the next 2023.
That's just outstanding news to hear. And then can you have any data? My other question is, are there data points in how many of these students who are doing dual enrollment are then enrolling as Pima students after they graduate from high school?
And that's one of the biggest tasks that we're really trying to focus on. And that's why, David Ariano had mentioned us here, because we're trying to create some partnership to really target those kids. I'm working on some pathways, not only the pathways that we have for the college, but pathways that start with freshmen or sophomores in high school, because we're very confident that HB 2021 is going to pass, and that's going to really help us jumpstart our goal to achieving the AZ 60 goal that is established. So right now the number is not, well, the incoming freshman is not as high as I expected, but we knew that when I was coming in that that has to be a strategy, and that's what we're strongly working on at this point.
And then so 10,000 in 2 years, that's incredible. How large do you think, especially with the new legislation, how large do you think the total pool eventually will sort of, arrive at? Is it?
Well, we have approximately 40,000 high schoolers in the Pima County area. So we're projecting somewhere between the 20 to 25% of that we can work on. We're also having conversations with high schools that typically are AP schools, but we're looking at how do we include dual enrollment with our AP in our AP program. So, for example, in a pathway, say freshmen can take an AP course, maybe the freshman sophomore year, but they'll be also blending in some dual enrollment courses at the same time. So with that philosophy and that idea, we're actually looking at probably getting to about the 20 to 25% of that 40,000 high school students in this area.
That's terrific. And then my final question, do you have all the resources you need to be able to grow to this?
No.
Is that a trick question?
No, it's just an
you know what? I guess that could be another conversation another time, but I just have to say we're growing. We're growing and we're growing fast. We're growing faster than what my proposal was 2 years ago. So I would just leave it at that at this
Well,
point.
I think it's good for the board to know so that, as we're in our conversations, that we're making sure that enough resources are incrementally growing with you so that your team isn't overwhelmed and you can really manage and succeed. So these students who have this touch point have a really extraordinary experience with Pima. So again, thank you
I appreciate that question. Thank you very much for asking that.
We really appreciate it. Okay, we're moving on to our next.
I just like to add one thing.
Yes.
Hello. Hi. Yeah, no, I'm kind of echoing it, but it is just to push that point, to press that point that it's really important what you're doing. And I think having a concerted effort towards recruitment and follow through on the dual enrollment students to naturally progress as full-time students at Pima Community College. I think that's something that will really help with our enrollment and someday, tuition issues. So anything that you need, you have to voice to us. I mean, I hear you say 5 staff people and 8,000 students and you're taking their calls. That seems like a lot to me. So don't be shy about asking for things.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that.
Okay.
You're very humble.
Well, you got to remember, we started with just myself and now we have 5. So no, I understand. Thank you so much for caring and understanding the potential of even expanding it further. So I appreciate that.
Thank you very much for your hard work. Okay, next we're on to our reports to representatives of the board. The first report is our student report with Sage Fukai McClay. And everyone has 5 minutes, and I'm just going to let you know like about 30 seconds before.
Okay, great. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Hello, my name is Sage Fukai McCullough, and I'll be giving the Student Governing Board report for the virtual adult education. ABECC will continue virtual programming in the April through June session. The student engagement team is offering a How the Government Works in Your Life series. Students will learn about the level of government as an important part of their lives through group discussions, reading materials, and other group activities. At the end of the series, students will get registered for the Request to Speak system at the state legislature and be trained on how to use it in order to voice their opinions on legislative bills. For virtual student life, we have the Rise Up Women's Empowerment Conference. This is taking place on Friday, March 26th from 1:30 p.m. to 5 p.m. virtually via Zoom. Student Life is co-hosting with the Center for International Education and Global Engagement and the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Office. The 6th Annual Women's Empowerment Conference around the theme of Rise Up. There will be a number of guest speakers and sessions offered by Pima Community College staff, faculty, and student leaders around our theme of Rise Up. Resilience, intersectionality, support, equity, unify, and purpose. They will also be hosting an Aztec Gold Advanced Leadership Program, which will take place March 10th through March 28th. The Aztec Gold Program is an advanced leadership program for the Pima Community College students who want to develop a deeper understanding of leadership theory and practice. The program will include workshops focused on understanding leadership theory and a group civic engagement project to put leadership theory into practice. Students who complete the program will receive a completion certificate and a gold cord to wear at the PCC commencement. For virtual first-year experience, they have these upcoming events. There is Career Cafe on March 9th from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. PWAP March 3rd at 11 a.m. to 1 p.m., which is Workforce and Continuing Education. Faces of FYE March 19th at 1:30 and an early book purchase program. And then the Money Matters March 11th, noon to 1:30 p.m., which is tax tips. Then for the virtual Student Senate, the Pima Aztec Student Senate has finalized their yearly project. We're going to be working on a community safety project and have a day dedicated for domestic violence awareness, and then another day for sexual assault awareness. And we are hoping to invite the Pima Community Police to help with that and contribute as a community member. The Student Senate will also participate in a live Q&A session to answer any questions to potential Senate candidates for the 2021-2022 school year. And we also assisted in a club fair in February. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your report. Our next is our adjunct faculty report with Sean Mendoza. Mr. Mendoza, you have 5 minutes. Is Mr. Mendoza with us?
Hello? Yes, he is.
Okay.
I was muted for a second.
Go ahead.
Said during the pandemic. Chairman Klinko, Chancellor Lambert, members of the board, and honored guests. This last fall, the adjunct faculty met with college administration on topics important to our employee group. With support from the provost and a team led by Kate Schmidt, we're working collaboratively to address 3 important issues. They are compensation for current and future training, communication for clear deadlines for canceled classes, and greater transparency in the selection process for teaching classes. This team anticipates completing its work by the end of the spring semester, and I look forward to delivering the efforts of the team at that time. Lastly, with 10% of Arizonans receiving 2 vaccine doses and a downward trend of COVID infections and deaths, many of us are starting to see the light at the end of the pandemic tunnel, but we aren't there yet. Given this, I would ask that the college community continue its COVID mitigation strategies, college-wide email updates, and opportunities for online meetings with administration provided by the Chancellor and Provost. Thank you for your time. Please wear a mask and continue to social distance. This ends my report to the board. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mendoza, and thank you for that reminder about best practices for mitigating the pandemic. The next report is our staff report from Michael Lopez. Mr. Lopez, you have 5 minutes.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, let me get to where I need to get. Chairman Klinko, Chancellor Lambert, governing board members, colleagues, and guests. I am the governing board representative, Mike Lopez. Our current staff council officers are Gloria Coronado, chairperson, John Wesley, vice chair, Diane Miller, past chair, Manny Carrillo, communications officer, Fatima Wilson, treasurer, and Susana Armenta, roll keeper. Our last staff council meeting was on February 5th through Google Meets on a Friday at 8:30. We had 32 Pima personnel attend, including 19 voting members. Mr. Jonathan Brownlee presented to the staff council on the Google Drive file stream. Phase 3 of testing for Google Drive file stream is complete, and questions were asked and answered on how to create a file drive. Staff council members feel that the Google Drive file stream will be beneficial in many ways and in many circumstances. The provost report was presented by Kate Schmidt, discussed various activities, recognitions, and acknowledgements, Black History Month events, diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI events, the week of racial hearing, February 15th through the 18th. Many staff have worked on planning and the presentation of the week of racial healing events, along with supporting and promoting Black History Month events. A question was asked by staff regarding vaccines and insurance for students, and staff expressed some COVID concerns regarding re-entering normal campus settings. Human resources and finance update was presented by David B. Focused mostly on class compensation and the CARES and CRISA acts. The Staff Council Bylaws Subcommittee submitted changes of the bylaws to the General Counsel for review and recommendations. Bylaw changes focus on elections and appropriate representation to the Staff Council from various district staff, departments, and areas, ensuring proper representation. This committee is headed by John Wesley, Gloria Coronado, and Fatima Wilson. The bylaw changes were decided with consideration from other Staff Council officers, and members prior to submission to the General Council. Staff Council election dates to be considered and announced after General Council review of Staff Council bylaws. And that concludes my report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lopez. We appreciate it. Next, we have our faculty report with Brooke Anderson. Ms. Anderson, you have.
Good evening, everybody. I hope you can hear me okay. Hello, Chairman Klinko, board members, fellow colleagues, and guests. I want to just highlight a couple of information items. The deans and department heads continue to work hard on creating a flexible fall schedule that includes in-person, online, and virtual options for students. While faculty still have concerns about returning to in-person teaching, many of us are excited to return to our campuses and our students. Senators have been providing input on reentry plans in various meetings across the college, and Senate President Josie Milliken has scheduled a second Faculty Senate student panel for Senate's April 2nd meeting. We would love for the board members to attend and hear what the students have to say. Regarding AP 1.01.03, thank you, Jeff, for delaying its posting and planning to talk with concerned faculty. And thank you, Chairman Klinko, for requesting an update on the situation in the next meeting. Like Makayla said, faculty see the comment on this information item that states, quote, a multi-departmental collaborative drafting and editing process was employed to produce the proposed AP as misrepresenting what took place. Faculty think this AP needs more revision before it's ready to move on to the next steps in the process. As for faculty notable accomplishments, as you can see on the report, there are too many to share in 5 minutes. So I'm highlighting just a few. In sciences, you can see there are a number of impressive grants. Jennifer Katcher, biology faculty and PI, has an NSF HIS grant for course undergraduate research experiences. Students collect and analyze DNA from bees. In the fall, 8 students in 2 virtual synchronous classes interpreted DNA barcoding results for their assigned bees. Data for all bees, including DNA barcodes, were published in the Barcode of Life database, and each student's name is published along with their bees record. Yvonne Sandoval, math faculty, Jorge Pelos Chavez, physics faculty, Jennifer Katcher, biology faculty, and Jim Washburn, part-time geography faculty, are mentors for the NSF STEM PCC U Arizona Bridge Grant this academic year. The faculty mentors are supporting 26 Pima students who have received scholarships and will be transferring to U Arizona in the fall. Dennis Just, astronomy physics department head and co-PI with U Arizona, is overseeing a NASA STEM asteroid grant. This currently involves 6 PCC students who registered for Dr. Just's Physics 196 independent study. These students are all interested in doing aerospace, robotics, and planetary science research with U Arizona faculty and have attended a virtual Sci-Tech conference that featured a number of talks focused on space. In communication, the Aztec Press has become the digital publication Pima Post. The Post will feature a revamped website and maintain its focus on Pima and local events that impact the PCC community. This change allows deadlines to be more fluid and editors to post news as it happens. To increase new ESL student enrollment, ESL faculty have created a comprehensive, innovative, and streamlined experience for newly enrolled ESL students and have improved the visibility of PCC's ESL courses to non-native English speakers in the Tucson community. They have added a question on PCC's application that identifies ESL students more strategically, created an ESL advising support team and dedicated email address for all ESL inquiries. A new presence on Pima's website features programs, information, helpful contacts, and student testimonials by our ESL ambassadors. They've recorded a new student orientation video tailored specifically to the needs of ESL students. created an ESL virtual welcome session to help newest ESL students develop a sense of belief, belonging, and support as they pursue their studies at Pima. And this year, they are developing a certificate of language proficiency and working to increase visibility for ESL through targeted marketing and community outreach. Last semester, under the leadership of English faculty member and first-year writing coordinator, Elliot Charia, 17 Pima faculty and staff across the college joined forces toward the development of a liberatory writing across the curriculum program. This program is housed in the English department and seeks to support and empower student writers in all disciplines through liberatory right-to-learn curriculum to promote and encourage multidisciplinary queer, Black, Indigenous, Asian, and borderland writing and research methodologies to increase social justice-oriented collaboration between Pima's disciplines and programs. Initial work on a multi-year proposal is underway, beginning with student and college employee outreach, data collection and representation at the International Writing Across the Curriculum Conference and Summer Institute. A proposal and budget request for this program was submitted to the provost in January, and the LWAC committee is hoping to receive a response soon so this work can start in the fall. And finally, to highlight a couple things in applied technology, excuse me, I'm going to choke now. The automotive department has run all 16 auto classes in person for 24 weeks without a single case of COVID-19 exposure. They've retained 93% of their enrollment numbers this spring as well. Automated industrial technology faculty are completing training so they can offer students certification in collaborative robotics. This team is incorporating Industry 4.0 equipment into the lab and has added close to 100 students through dual enrollment. And finally, BCT faculty and students are working with Habitat for Humanity to build a home for a Tucson family. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson, for that outstanding presentation. And I also just want to thank and recognize all of the incredible work that the faculty and staff are doing. And thank you for always bringing the work of the faculty to our attention. And again, a huge shout out to Jennifer Kutcher for her work bringing in another NSF HIS grant. I think she got the first one in our college's history, and it's very inspiring to hear about the work she's doing. And finally, if you could please send invitations, if you'd like the board to attend events, please send them to the Chancellor's office for distribution. Finally, we have our administrator report with Jeff Thies. Jeff, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Chairperson Klinko, members of the board, Chancellor Lambert, colleagues, students, and guests. My name is Jeff Thies. I'm the Dean of College Readiness and Student Success and your administrative board representative. There are 4 topics I want to hit on quickly in our report. Workforce development, which we heard a lot from earlier from Ian, so I'll make sure we focus on those highlights from workforce that were not already covered. A quick view and an equitable outcomes data table and graph, a cross-functional project that multiple administrators have been working on, and then lastly, provide kudos to a colleague and the Dean of Mathematics at the college. So first, with workforce development, in the apprenticeship area, Pima Community College was the first community college to become a registered apprenticeship sponsor and currently has 5 approved occupations on its sponsorship list. With our successful work with the American Association of Community Colleges EECA grant, Denise Kingman and Adrian Joan have been asked to present to peer institutions. Denise has been asked to join the Arizona Apprenticeship Advisory Committee as the community college representative for the state. Great work, Denise. We've also worked with the Pasquale Yaqui Tribe and NACTEP to register a tribal member and their employer for a registered apprenticeship program. Next, from workforce, the paramedics program is rolling out VR, virtual reality, patients for virtual reality paramedics training. The system allows students to practice patient scenarios designed and assessed by Pima instructional staff in a fully immersive virtual reality environment. And last from workforce, the Pasquayaki Partnership. Brian Stewart, our campus VP at Northwest, is the liaison to the Pasquayaki tribe and has led a series of inclusive, collaborative IGA planning and strategy meetings with both college and tribal partners actively engaging in the planning. The Pima team includes the Workforce Development Dean, Amanda Abens, contracts and additional stakeholders as needed. The college continues to expand the important partnership with the Pasquayaki tribe with a focus on using data to increase student success and student access, progression, and success. The partnership is broad and includes dual enrollment, language and culture courses, student support extension services, and a variety of workforce and CTE offerings. Moving on to a quick snapshot with some data. Being an evidence-based decision-making institution, we always want to take a look at how we're doing with our equitable student outcomes. This graph aggregates the academic year, so that includes fall, spring, summer, and the 09 terms, along with the 40 terms, 41, 42, 43, and 44. And in this particular graph, you can see that the American Indian, Alaskan Native, and the Black African American populations, those are defined by IPEDS, earned passing grades at a lower percentage than the aggregate over the last 3 full academic years, similar to what is presented in the red for 2019-20. Both have an equity gap consistently below the standard error of 3 percentage points. Latinx students' course success rates fluctuate between being within that standard error and just outside, but the consistency of underperforming compared to the aggregate is true across all 3 years. Of the 136,000 grade records in 1920, we did see a spike in incompletes of up to about just over 5,000. And that was due primarily to the incomplete audit that we provided as part of the pandemic shift last spring. Once these grades are resolved, the overall success rate should shift. So that's been the third piece here, the cross-functional project. Incomplete audits has been something that a group of administrators have been working on under the leadership of Bruce Moses starting last December. Incomplete audits were provided in spring 2020 as a response to the transition from in-person courses to online courses. The incomplete policy has 2 primary components that are considered for a one-time adjustment. One of those considerations is the deadline of an automatic grade change to an F, and the other is the 1-year deadline when incompletes have to be completed. A decision to adjust the remaining I's to a W based on the temporary redefinition once the 1-year term expires was made in January. So that means we have worked feverishly with deans and department heads and faculty to make sure that any audits that students have taken since last spring are being converted over to grades before the registrar takes over with that final step at the end. So that's an ongoing project to clean up the incomplete audit options that were provided last spring before the term of that incomplete disappears. And lastly, Nina Corson, our Dean of Mathematics, gave a keynote at the statewide Arithmetic Conference last Friday, and I was fortunate to attend. Nina did an incredible job of presenting to the faculty that are in that association on the future of mathematics and how math faculty can be engaged with student success initiatives on their campus. She was actively engaged the group that was attending, and so it was a great event altogether, and just wanted to give Nina some kudos for that. And that ends my report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Thies. We're moving on to our next item, the Chancellor's report. Chancellor Lambert.
Yes, good evening, everybody. First, I'd like to say thank you to the faculty and the staff and administration. As you can hear tonight, just so many great things happening at the college, and it's happening because of all of you and all of us working together, focused on the vision that we've set forth to be one of the premier community colleges in the country. So that cannot happen without all of us coming together and focusing on that grand vision. So thank you. Also, I'm just so excited that we can start to see that light at the end of the tunnel. As you know, here in the state of Arizona, over 2 million, nearly 300,000 vaccinations have been administered. And so at this pace, things should pretty much look very, very different when we get into the summer and going into the fall. Now, and you'll hear more at the all college meeting on Friday, but I'm very hopeful that we can come back to the fall into a new normal environment that will not look like the environment we were in before we went into the pandemic. It's going to be more enhanced, more improved, also with attention always to safety. So I'm just so excited that we're getting there. But we got to still be patient. We got to be vigilant. We need to continue to follow protocols, and we'll stick to that. We will not do something that's inconsistent with the CDC and with the Pima Health Department's direction and guidance. I just want to acknowledge Bill and his team, because they've been ever vigilant around these safety protocols, working with David Doré and the campus folks just to make sure everything runs smoothly. And we're just so pleased. And thank you, Brooke, for highlighting the auto department, because we have a lot of auto departments. So many of our departments that have been going here on the ground have done very, very well to keep the environment safe for everybody. Also, Bill informed me tonight that we have taken ownership of the auto building. So we're so excited that we can now begin the process of transitioning from the current facility into that beautiful new facility and have things ready, hopefully by the fall for instruction in that great new facility. Also, a number of us participated in the 21-day Racial Equity Challenge, and just some key highlights from that. And if you haven't had a chance to participate, I would highly encourage anyone to do that. And if board members are interested in it, just let Andrea know, and we'll get you connected with the 21-day Racial Equity Challenge. So tone policing, intersectionality, defunding the police, microaggressions, and so many other themes were covered as part of that process. And interesting enough, we ended the 21-day challenge with Dr. Eddie Moore speaking to all of us who participated in this first round. And it turns out Dr. Moore and I have a connection back to the Evergreen State College in Olympia, Washington. In fact, one of the key individuals at the college, he credits him for saving his life. And that's a powerful statement to be made by anybody. So thank you to Dr. Moore. And I just want to thank Hilda Ladner and Dr. Daisy Patel Rodriguez and others who helped really pull that together for us. Also, we have received our Carissa funds. And I just want to thank the board for your insight and input, and thank Norma and her team for putting together a different a framework for how we would decide which level and dollar amounts and how many students we would disperse funds to. And it's important to recognize that this set of funds came with an expanded definition of who could be covered. So that was a positive thing. Unfortunately, the federal government's still not recognizing DACA students or international students for eligibility. But we will do our best to reach as many of our students who are eligible. And we're hoping that we can start dispersing the funds by as early as Monday of next week. So again, just very excited for the great work that everyone's done in this area. And I want to thank the board for participating in the ACCT Legislative Summit. It was a lot different this year. And Kat, we brought you into a different environment, but thank you for participating. And next year when we go, you'll get to really feel the significance of the event when you're there with thousands of trustees from across the country, really making a difference on Capitol Hill. And I also want to thank the students, our students that we had, like each year, just amazing ambassadors for the college. And we should all be proud of the difference we're making in their lives. And their ability to articulate their experience is just phenomenal. Also, I'll just touch on a few things that we addressed in that legislative summit. So we talked about the DREAM Act and supporting the DREAM Act. We thank the lawmakers and their staff for the support of CARES Act and CARISA. We really advocated for the reauthorization of the Higher Education Act and the reauthorization of the Workforce Investment Opportunity Act. All of these things are major pieces of legislation that are important to us. And as you all have heard, this most recent stimulus will be signed by the president, the 1.9 trillion. And yes, we will be receiving some additional resources as part of that 1.9. We're also very excited about some new developments around infrastructure. And that should be probably the next wave of investment coming from the federal government. And with that, investment into job training, et cetera. Also, I just want to say kudos to Brian Stewart and to Serena. I'm going to say Serena's last name incorrectly, so someone correct me. Brashadio, for just leading the teams from the Paskiaski tribe and from the college to come to a next level agreement. And we're so excited about that. So thank you both and your teams for the great work that you did. And I just wanted to, again, just thank Hilda and Daisy for their work around diversity, equity, inclusion for the college, and for really putting together tonight's anti-hate, Asian hate proclamation. So thank you for doing that and working with Jeff to make sure that it's all cleaned up and ready to go. And I would invite the board, if you like, please let Andrea know if you would like to take a 3D virtual reality tour of that amazing 100,000 square foot advanced manufacturing center. I had the opportunity to take that tour, and it is phenomenal. And you also get to experience the power of virtual reality, augmented reality, and you're going to see more and more of that being integrated into the work we do here at the college, both from an instructional standpoint, but also just from a employee day-to-day work standpoint. And in this model, you're going to see how taking what we're doing on the facility sides to build the new facilities and be able to see it before you actually get to go in it. And it's an amazing experience. So we'd love for you to come take advantage of that opportunity. And I just, special thanks to my team. We could not do what we do at the college without having a strong administration and to provide the overall leadership and guidance for the direction we're going in. As you hear, the great work happening on the instructional side. So thank you to our provost, and thank you on the student services side to our president of campuses. Again, we're just seeing so many tremendous positive things. So let's keep focused on the positive, because we're going to make a major difference for this community. Thank you all. I'm done.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Chancellor Lambert, for all of the work that you're doing, and your continual vision and leadership for this institution. We really value it. Thank you. Okay, next are information items, items 3.1 through 3.11. Mr. Sullivan, if you could read the information items, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The information items that were included with the board materials for this meeting are the December 2020 financial statements, employment information listing one new hire and a few retirements and separations, faculty hiring, that's the hiring of one new regular faculty member for the nursing program, a list of several individuals who have been qualified to teach as adjunct faculty at Pima Community College, the list of administrators who will be receiving contracts for the 21-22 fiscal year. Sorry, that's a typo in the agenda item. It's actually for the 21-22 fiscal year. The faculty appointments, that's also for the regular faculty appointments, that's also for the fiscal year 21-22 timeframe. The two administrative procedure changes, one AP 1.0, 1.03, which relates to the development of standard operating procedures. As you heard, we'll delay posting the final version until we have some further conversation. And then there is also an AP 3.25.03 relating to the College Curriculum Council. That's an existing AP that's been revised. Next, we have the 2021 through 2022 academic calendar. Then we have the information regarding the employee dental insurance coverage that will be available during the fiscal year 21 to 22 cycle. A description of the employee life insurance benefit that will be available during the fiscal year 21-22 cycle. And finally, we're doing a highlighting of different grant programs around the college. This particular one relates to a grant that the college received for English language training during the fiscal year 2021 cycle, and that amount is in excess of $347,000.
Okay, thank you very much. Next, we have the consent agenda items. Mr. Sullivan, if you could read the consent items.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The items on the consent agenda for this evening are the minutes for the February 3rd, 2021 executive session meeting, the February 3rd, 2021 regular meeting, the February 15th study, and the February 15th study session. Next, we have a list of proposed sabbatical approvals for fall 2021 and 22. Next, we have a proposed an amendment to a contract with Aleutian Company for e-invoicing and e-procurement services. The proposed total cost, if we went through the entire 5-year extensions would not exceed $565,465. Next, we have a proposed up to 2-year extension for the current contract with Bracey Tucker Brown for federal lobbying services for an amount not expected to exceed $168,000. We have a proposed amendment to the contract for services we have with the Smith Group for the review of the facilities and educational master plans, of a slight adjustment in the scope of work, which would result in an increased cost of $15,125. Next, we have requested approval for the employee medical benefits and pharmaceutical benefits for fiscal year 21-2022. Those are, the total cost for that will be in the budget to be presented to the board. Excuse me. Next, we have a proposal to adopt a public safety personnel retirement system pension funding policy that at an annual cost of $1.3 million for the next 5 years, which would improve the funding ratio for that pension plan. Next, we have a request for approval of the long-term disability plan, which would increase the amount of benefits available to employees by decreasing the waiting period before which they are able to receive disability benefits. Next, we have a request for approval of a new Assistant Vice Chancellor for Curriculum and Academic Quality Improvement position, which represents the consolidation of 2 existing administrator positions. And finally, we have the proposed intergovernmental agreement with the Pasquayaqui tribe for the provision of a variety of educational programs.
Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I would like to table one of the items.
Okay. Well, we would have to pull the item and then we would discuss it separately. So which item would you pull?
The one for the new position that's going to replace the 2.
Okay, so we can discuss that item separately. So
Okay.
that item, just to be clear, that's item 4.11. Okay, so do I have a motion to adopt the consent agenda minus 4.11?
Yes.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Sullivan, could you do a roll call vote, please?
Sure. Hold on one second. All right. Catherine Ripley.
Yes.
Damian Klinko. Sorry, Mr. Klinko, I couldn't hear your vote.
Yes.
Thank you. Maria Garcia.
Yes.
Meredith Hay.
Yes.
Luis Gonzalez.
Yes.
Okay, the motion carries unanimously. Next, we'll take item 5.1. Mr. Sullivan, if you could read the item, please.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, do you want to cover 4.11, the one consent agenda item that got pulled first?
I think we could just do that at the end, but we
Oh,
can.
okay. Very well. I just want to make sure we didn't forget that.
I have it on my list.
All right.
Read the item, please.
Item 5.1 is a proposed amendment to the bylaws. The recommendation is the Chancellor recommends that the Governing Board consider the proposal to amend Board Bylaw Article 4. The proposed language is attached to the board materials. So if a board member would like to make the motion, then we can have discussion and see whether there's amendments or other changes requested.
Okay, Mr. Sullivan, I would make the motion that we table this item and address it as part of our annual 3-year review, which is scheduled to start May, April of this year. So that's the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion?
Yes. Okay,
Yes.
so is there a way to appeal your comment? I don't know.
So there is a motion on the floor, Mr. Sullivan.
So there's been a motion to table. So now there's a time for discussion. So if there are questions or individual board members have different views, there's certainly an opportunity to express them. Then the question is, then the board would vote. If the motion to table passes, then that would end discussion of this proposal for the time being until it's put on a future meeting. If the motion fails, then there's no motion on the table and a board member is free to make a different motion regarding the proposal. Does that answer your question sufficiently?
No, I don't understand it. So you're asking, so you're saying you're going to table he wants to table the motion. So is there a discussion or is there not a discussion?
There is a discussion.
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm sorry if that wasn't clear. So there can be a discussion and then the board would vote on the motion to table, and then depending on what happens with that, the other, then we would take the next steps. I guess the one other thing I should mention is if someone wants to offer a different time frame for tabling the motion, that would be also an appropriate request at this time.
But we have a discussion. So Ms.
Let's
Ripley.
have the discussion.
Yes, Ms. Ripley, it looks like she had.
I just have one question for discussion, and that is, are we voting either to vote now or to table the specifically to change the bylaw to have the terms 1-year terms, and are we voting on separately to make that effective now or effective at the next January meeting? So is it all combined?
This was just a combined motion, but if.
Right, so the motion on the table right now is only the question of, is the board going to consider the proposal tonight, or are you tabling it to the future meeting after the review process, as Mr. Klinko has proposed? So that's the question now. If the board decision is not to table and to consider the issue tonight, then you have, yes, 2 questions in front of you really. One is, are you to amend the board bylaw as proposed? And the second is when to make it effective.
Okay, so
a part of the discussion, if I may, Jeff, could you tell us a little bit about the proposed structure of what the 3-year review will look like, or the full bylaw review?
Sure. So assuming we do something similar to what happened 3 years ago, we staff and with assistance of outside counsel would go through the entire bylaws with the board. It would probably take a series of study sessions to do that. The outcome of that would likely be that the board might propose multiple changes to different sections of the bylaws. And at the conclusion of that process, depending on the will of the board, we could vote on the entire package of changes, or we could do them article by article. But the point of that process is to go through the entire bylaws in a completely comprehensive way from the very beginning to the very end and see what changes, if any, the board thinks need to be made to improve them.
Okay, my concern is that the way that the bylaw is stated right now is that it goes against state statute. Okay, now, so what Damien is proposing is that we table it until we go through the bylaw reviews. Is that correct? We stop.
Yes.
Okay, that's what you're proposing right now. And I'm saying that we need to have a discussion to come into compliance with a state statute.
Mr. Silva, do you believe that we're out of compliance with state statute regarding this?
No, I don't believe that the current bylaws providing for a 2-year term for an officer chair, I believe that is consistent with state law. It is not a violation of state law.
Well, according to Maricopa, they voted to change this for that very reason, because they wanted us to come into compliance.
So with all due respect, there were some individuals who, like yourself, have that opinion. That was not a universal decision, and they voted to change the bylaws essentially to just resolve the argument and no longer have it be an issue.
Okay, then if we're going to table it, if the vote is to table this amendment, or this change in bylaw, then I'm going to request a special hearing, a special meeting to discuss this.
I would like to also, I mean, this is still discussion. So, and the question at hand needs to be addressed and needs to be answered satisfactorily by all board members. And that is it up for opinion, or is it up to interpretation on what the statute actually reads? And I think we all need to be comfortable that it's cut and dry, and that and that's exactly how the statute reads. And I think that discussion needs to happen. It could be at the next board meeting. It could be during the bylaws review. But I don't think we can make a decision today until we get a definitive answer on the interpretation of the statute.
Mr. Sylvan?
Well, I guess my question is, and do you have a specific proposal to how to do that? So I'm happy to write up my analysis and explain why I think the current bylaws are consistent with the state law. That might certainly be a start.
We could also, for consideration, we could ask for an opinion from the Attorney General.
And I'm okay with that.
So the way to do that probably is to combine what I just suggested with what has just been suggested. Is what I can do is write up an analysis, and then I can submit it to the Office of the Attorney General and ask them to review the opinion and opine whether they agree with it or whether they believe it should be modified.
Fine.
Okay, so that would be a condition of the tabling. Is
Yes.
what I'm hearing as a potential amendment. So I would offer an amendment to the motion to that effect, that we would table the item. Mr. Sullivan will prepare, and it looks like Mr. Gonzalez has a question as well. But let me just sort of clarify what the amendment would be, and then we have to check to make sure that the seconder is comfortable with that. So we would table the item. Mr. Sullivan will prepare an opinion. He'll send it to the Attorney General for comment, and then we'll get that back. And then by that time, this will probably be in the review of the 3-year review, which will start really in May. So it seems like it's all sort of coalescing at the same time. Dr. Hay, is that suitable as the seconder?
Yes.
Okay. So we have additional discussion. Mr. Gonzalez? You're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, clarification, Mr. Sylvan. In order to table this, what we're table is basically the chair terms, which is 2-year right now currently, but we wanted to change it to 1 year.
So if I let's see if I can try and provide some clarity. So there's the the bylaws currently provide that the chair and the vice chair serve 2-year terms. There's been a request that that be changed so that it be a 1-year term instead of a 2-year term.
Exactly.
The motion, yes. So, okay, good. So we're clear about that. The motion before the board for consideration and vote is whether to essentially delay consideration of that change until May, and in the meantime that I would be directed to prepare an analysis of whether the 2-year term complies with state law and submit that to the Arizona Attorney General for its opinion, so that that information would be available to the board as part of the process of reviewing the bylaws to further inform your discussion and decision about whether to change the term for the officers.
Okay. My understanding at this real time right now, I thought we were still in discussion. I know that Mr. Damian mentioned a motion, but hasn't been seconded yet. So discussion, I still feel that it should be voted on in reference to the initial, which is the changes of the terms from 2-year to 1 year, correct?
Mr. Gonzalez, we actually do have a second. Dr. Hay seconded the motion to table, so we have a motion on the table. We've amended the motion to include the review, and that we would actually, Jeff, I would think that once we get the review comment back from the Attorney General, we would then add this back onto the regular agenda. We wouldn't just wait arbitrarily until May. We have that review.
Right. We can certainly adjust the schedule depending on when we get feedback from the Arizona Attorney General. I just can't predict exactly how long that's going to take.
So that is the motion that we have on the table.
Okay.
Okay. So are there any additional discussion? Okay, hearing none, Mr. Sylvan, could you read the roll?
Yes, I would be glad to, Mr. Chair. Ms. Ripley.
You're muted, Ms. Ripley.
I know, sorry. Yes.
Mr. Klinko.
Yes.
Ms. Garcia.
No.
Dr. Hay.
Yes.
Mr. Gonzalez.
No, because I know that the last time it was changed, we had set precedents of 1 year, and I said no.
Okay, so the motion passes 3-2 with Board Member Garcia and Board Member Gonzalez dissenting. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the proclamation to denounce anti-Asian violence. Mr. Sylvan, could you please read the recommendation and the proclamation?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'd be glad to. The Chancellor recommends that the Governing Board issue a proclamation regarding the rise in anti-Asian violence. The specific language of the resolution is as follows. Whereas the United States of America has lost more than 500,000 individuals due to COVID-19, and since the beginning of the pandemic, there have been over 3,000 incidents of violence against Asian Pacific Islander Desi Americans. Whereas anti-Asian sentiment in the United States has continued since the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882, including racially motivated attacks on people of Asian Pacific Islander Desi American descent. Whereas February 19th is the day of remembrance for Executive Order 9066, which called for the internment of Japanese Americans in 1942, further disarming 120,000 US citizens of their First through Sixth Amendment rights. Whereas Arizona was one of the states where such internment camps were located, including the nearby Gordon Hirabayashi location at the base of Mount Lemmon. Whereas a Tucson church largely attended by people of Asian heritage was vandalized, and whereas many Asian Pacific Islander and Desi Americans continue to face fear of verbal abuse, female fetishization, injury or death while attending school, going to the grocery store, getting a COVID-19 vaccine, or simply taking a walk. Whereas President Biden issued an executive order on January 26, 2021 to combat xenophobia against Asian Americans, especially in light of the pandemic, and urged all leaders to actively commit to enact the order. Whereas the governing board supports Pima Community College's unwavering commitment to social justice through policies and practices that further diversity, equity, and inclusion in our classrooms, offices, and throughout the campus community. For these policies and practices move the college forward and compel us to demand better. Whereas the governing board applauds and endorses college efforts to proactively create curriculum and extracurricular activities that give our students the opportunity to hear a multitude of voices discuss and debate critical issues of social justice. Whereas the governing board recognizes the long-standing Asian American sentiment that exists in our nation and is committed to acting deliberately to create a safe and inclusive learning environment while also offering more programs, initiatives, and efforts to expand the understanding of Asian Pacific Islander Desi Americans in the United States. Be it resolved, the college values and embraces broadening its curriculum to include Asian Pacific American Studies courses, acknowledging the necessity of creating academic opportunities to learn about a population that has inhabited the United States since the 1800s. Further, the governing board recommits itself to support faculty, staff, and administration in their stalwart pursuit of quality higher education for all who seek it in our community, knowing that education empowers a citizenry that can respond effectively to the challenges that confront them and is the most powerful tool for changing the world.
Do I have a motion to adopt the proclamation?
So move.
I move we adopt.
Sorry, Kat.
Okay,
I'll
so
second Kat.
okay, so I hear Board Member Ripley the motion, seconded by Dr. Hay. Mr. Sullivan, if you could do the roll call vote.
Yes, Mr. Chair, be glad to. Ms. Ripley?
Yes.
Mr. Klinko? I'm
Yes.
sorry, Ms. Garcia?
Yes.
Dr. Hay?
Yes.
Mr. Gonzalez?
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes unanimously. Next is board policy changes, final reading 5.3. Ms. Sullivan, if you could read the recommendation.
The Chancellor recommends that the governing board approve the recommended changes to Board Policy 4.01 Financial Controls and Institutional Budget and Board Policy 4.07 Cash Reserves.
Is there a motion to adopt the recommendation?
So moved.
So moved by Dr. Hay. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Ripley. Discussion. Is there any discussion on the item, or do we want to hear a presentation and details about
Your presentation?
Chancellor Lambert, could you provide?
Yes, so I have Dr. Dave B on, and he will be glad to take us through both of these BPs.
Okay.
Dave?
Good evening, Chairperson Klinko, members of the board, Chancellor Lambert, colleagues and guests. As was just mentioned, there are two board policy changes up for recommendation for the board tonight. Board Policy 4.01 is really just a moderate change to that policy, the financial controls and institutional budget policy. What it does is clarify a little bit of language. It adds the words procedures to one of the sections, procedures, and some other little minor changes. And then there's a section that it adds in that to be financially prudent and responsible, to also financially plan for financial obligations and commitments, including long-term liabilities, bond covenants, and these are formal obligations that we have. And so what it's just stipulating is that as part of the standard practice with our financial procedures, that we take those into consideration when we're going into the budget. Just as an example of that, the board passed the public safety retirement system change to address some of the unfunded liability in that program. That's the kind of thing, and in fact, that's where the liabilities language came from, was folding in the concept from that. So that's the first one. The second one is a revision of the cash reserves policy, and what it really is intended to do is create a target threshold for our reserves. So we have a sort of line in the sand, if you will, for how many reserves, how much we should have on hand to maintain healthy practices from a financial standpoint, so that we don't over obligate ourselves financially, that we have good reserves. Think of the reserves as like that would be the money that we have in the bank for a rainy day or for a problem. We are held accountable to that in a couple of different ways. One is the HLC has financial metrics that we have to provide to them on an annual basis that show that we're being managed financially responsibly. And then the second one is credit rating agencies look at what our reserves that we have on hand, and if the institution ever had a reserves that dropped below a healthy level, that would result in negative credit ratings. We would have problems borrowing money at the rates that we presently have. And so what this policy change does is set a target threshold, which is essentially to ensure that there are reserves on hand when we're developing the budget and setting a course for the year that is 75% of the prior year's designated in general fund budget. So essentially what that means is that we would be able to fund 9 months of operations if revenues just ceased. And that then it further then gets into the detail of within those 75% or the 9 months worth of reserves that we have on hand, that they will be invested. 10% of that will be set aside for in cash and cash equivalents. That's so if there's a real clear emergency that we have highly liquid funds available. Again, that's just a moderate change from where our current practice is. I would say an insignificant change from what our current practice is. And then the rest is put into short-term and long-term investments, and the Finance Audit Committee routinely gets reports on how those funds are invested, and there are clear guidelines set out in terms of what the particular investments we're able to put the money into. And then it gets into the target threshold. What it does is that if those reserves fall below that 75% threshold, what it would trigger is that in our annual budget process, we would be coming to the board and we would be providing a plan for how to get back up. If it falls below, we will come up with a plan for how to get back up to that 75% threshold. Just for context, right now, we're closer to the 90 to 95% level. So this isn't something that's going to trigger anything immediately. But what it does that's going to be, I think, really helpful for the board is when we think about reinvesting in our long-term, in our capital needs, things like adding the allied health building, which we've talked about and the board has given direction on moving forward with that building, is that there will be sort of a marker in that we can look at and say, okay, we've obligated this much. We're still in a good, healthy place in terms of that 75% threshold. So it's really to give the board a marker and will provide assurance that we are in a very financially healthy place and running things with very responsible reserves.
Are there questions for Dr. B? Ms. Garcia, I see your hand.
Okay, so what is our present threshold? Is it 95%?
We currently don't have a threshold. Just to give some we don't have that threshold that's equivalent to the 75%. So that's why it is creating that threshold now.
Okay.
In the past, what I would say is it's been in the last 10 years, it's ranged from about 55% to where we're at now, which is closer to 90%.
Okay, but so one of the things that you mentioned was that we're looking at 9 months to be able to pay off bills, correct? A 9-month time period.
Right.
With the money that you have available.
Of our operating expenses.
Of our operating expense.
The money that would be invested, we would have sufficient reserves that if no additional revenues come in, we could run operations for 9 months. Now, that's not exactly what would happen in reality, but that's essentially what the target threshold would be.
So just to clarify, so Dr. Reed, so that's in like a catastrophic event, pandemic 2, where we could have no classes and there was no internet. We could still keep everyone employed and the college running for 9 months with the reserves.
Correct.
And if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Klinko, that's way beyond standard practice. It's fine, but I mean, it's usually 90 days, which is great. 9 months, that's a long runway.
Are there any additional questions or concerns for Dr. B? Okay, are we ready?
I will also point out that this did go through the Finance Audit Committee, so they have endorsed the concepts and the thresholds that we're presenting.
Okay, so we have a motion to adopt. Is there, okay. Mr. Sylvan, will you read the roll?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Ripley?
Yes.
Mr. Klinko?
Yes.
Ms. Garcia?
Yes.
Dr. Hay?
Yes.
Mr. Gonzalez?
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes unanimously. Our next item is 4.5 fiscal year 2022 tuition and fees budget components. Mr. Sullivan, if you could read the recommendation, please.
The Chancellor recommends the Governing Board set tuition and service fees for fiscal year 2022, maintaining current in-state resident and non-resident, including summer and online tuition and service fee rates.
Do I have a motion to adopt the recommendation?
So moved.
Is there a second? I will second it. Discussion. Mr. Chancellor Lambert, do we have a overview of this?
Sure. I'd be glad to just make a comment and then ask Dr. Dave B to weigh in. So we are not, in short, we're not asking for a tuition increase this year. I don't know if Dave, you want to elaborate on that.
I'm not sure I could say it any more clearly or concisely as that. And this is consistent with what we've been talking with the buddy about, with the board about during study sessions and budget preparation, that in light of the passage of Proposition 481, with the additional revenues coming in from Prop 207, and particularly with the assistance coming from from Carissa, and the impacts that we know on our community and what has happened in terms of the pandemic, is that the recommendation is to keep tuition at the same level that it's at this current year.
Okay, is there any discussion? So I would just thank the administration for coming forward with this plan. I think the board has stated over and over just our total and complete concern for the students of this college and our community. And we appreciate you coming forward with this recommendation. At least I do. So if there are no further comments, Mr. Sylvan, could you do a roll call vote?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'd be glad to. Ms. Ripley?
Yes.
Mr. Klinko? Yes. Ms. Garcia?
Yes.
Dr. Hay?
Yes.
Mr. Gonzalez?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes unanimously. Our next item is 5.5, the academic year 2021-2022 success support course at no cost. Mr. Silverman, if you could please read the recommendation.
The Chancellor recommends the Governing Board authorize the Chancellor or designee to approve the following success support courses for academic year 2021 through 2022 at no cost for tuition or service fees: STU 100, STU 106, STU 107, STU 109, HRP 100, HON 101, Math 92 LB, Math 92 RQ, and Math 97 RQ.
Do I have a motion to adopt the recommendation?
So moved.
Okay, it sounds like it was moved by Ms. Garcia. Was there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Ripley. Do we need to have a discussion, or is it fairly clear what we're doing? Okay. Okay, so since it looks like everyone's shaking their head, we will move to the vote. Mr. Sylvan, if you could read the roll, please.
Ms. Ripley?
Yes.
Mr. Klinko? Is that a yes, Mr. Klinko?
Yes. I don't know why, though.
Every time we vote, your sound fades out for some reason. Ms. Garcia?
Yes.
Dr. Hay?
Yes.
Mr. Gonzalez?
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes unanimously. Next is item 4.11, the new position Assistant Vice Chancellor for Curriculum and Academic Quality Improvement. Do you want to restart by reading the recommendation?
Certainly, I'd be glad to, Mr. Chair. The Chancellor recommends the Governing Board approve the new Assistant Vice Chancellor for Curriculum and Academic Quality Improvement position, which represents a consolidation of 2 administrator positions.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the recommendation? And then we'll have yes, here.
Didn't I take? Didn't I get that one tabled?
No, currently we pulled it from the consent agenda, and now we're going to have a discussion about it. But to have the discussion, we need to make some sort of motion.
Okay.
Now we have a motion that Dr. Hayes made, but there hasn't been a second yet. So is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. So it's been seconded, and now a discussion. Chancellor Lambert, do you want to talk us through this position?
Yes, so I'll share some background on this, and then I'll probably have Jeff fill in some of the gaps. Unfortunately, our provost could not be here tonight, so this is being brought on behalf of our provost. So I'll take us back in time. So when the college was going through all of the HLC challenges, we had to quickly put together some new positions to handle some key areas of the college that we had tremendous gaps. One having to do with academic quality and improvement. We didn't have strong leadership overseeing our criterion for compliance with the HLC. We had multiple positions in curriculum. And over time, we have reorganized the institution. A lot of work has been done in those areas I just noted. And as a result, we don't need as many positions any longer. So this is a consolidation of a couple of positions, but rolling it up into that higher level position. So you're effectively taking an associate vice chancellor position and combining it with a director position to create just a single position that will oversee both the academic quality pieces and assessment. I'm sorry, curriculum.
So Ms. Garcia, you have a question.
Yeah. So, okay. So you're saying that these 2 administrative vice chancellors will be, will no longer have positions, correct? And you're going to create a new position. Are one of those people going to move forward, or are you considering or is somebody else being considered? And then my next question is, with enrollment being so low, why do we need that many people, that many directors and administrators? Because this particular area has a lot.
Well, so to your question, that's why we're doing this, to reduce the number.
The lower number, though, right?
Right, it's 2 to 1, from 2 positions down to 1. So that's part of the net effect of this. In terms of recruitment, we're going to do an internal interim placement, and then we're going to go out and do a national search. So what I like to do in most instances when someone receives their first administrator position, that they go through a national recruitment for that. There's some rare exceptions to that, but all administrator level positions since I've been here, with rare exceptions, have gone through a national search. We want to make sure we're attracting the best capable quality candidates that we can get to oversee key parts of the college. Now, I will say this, we have about 40-ish administrator positions. For the size of the college we are, that's a little low.
Considering the amount of enrollment that we have.
Ms. Garcia,
okay,
sorry.
So I recognize that. That's why we've kept the positions at a fairly low number. But what that does do, it places a disproportionate amount of work on individuals in the administration. Remember, the administration has a large set of responsibilities for compliance, which is in many cases very significant. And that is very true in this particular area. So to have only one person shouldering that load is asking a lot. And then they have planning responsibilities, they have supervision and management responsibilities, they have planning responsibilities. So you just start to add all of those things up. It is asking a lot of a single individual, but we recognize that enrollment is low. And as a result of that, we've had to make decisions to adjust the size of the college consistent with that through all ranks of the college. So everyone is carrying a heavier burden. So I recognize that too. But also keep in mind, we have stabilized our financial position thanks to the passage of 481, as well as with the marijuana proposition passing. The college is going to see for the first time new revenue that it hasn't seen in a long, long time. And then we also have bridge resources thanks to the COVID stimulus packages. So we're in a great position to start making some of these transitions and positioning for future growth of the institution.
Go ahead, Ms. Garcia. I'm sorry to cut you off earlier.
No, I'm fine.
Conversation going. So could you tell us a little bit more about what your concern is?
Well, I just don't see the point, with the amount of directors and administrators that we have at the present time, even though we're getting rid of 2, I think that this particular area of the college needs to be reevaluated as to what people are really doing. What contributions are they giving? I mean, are they being utilized effectively? Do they have the right skill sets? I don't know that. But I just don't think that making another position at a higher level takes care of it.
So Ms. Garcia, when the college moved from probation to notice, one of the big issues that the HLC pointed out to the college was that it was not effectively assessing student learning. And so we had to put greater attention to meet our HLC obligation. So I think this is a well worth it investment to keep the college out of hot water for something that it hadn't been able to do. And if you'd like to go and see the past reports, we're glad to supply to you. Decades, the HLC kept telling the college, you don't have an integrated systematic approach to assessing student learning outcomes. We now have that system in place, but we don't need multiple people. We just need one capable person. And now we're at that point where we can do that. And so I think it would be ill-advised not to have somebody overseeing this work.
Okay, well, I'm going to make one more comment. Sorry. Well, I just hope that this person is not going to be an out-of-state person that's going to run this, that's going to be on this program. That lives outside.
If I might, just to the point Ms. Garcia made or was raising earlier. So there was a retirement in this area of one of the people in the area, and the priorities and needs have shifted because we moved from not having a sufficiently robust student assessment system to implementing a new, much more robust system. And we've also made significant changes in curriculum. So the allocation of responsibilities among different positions, all that's been looked at, and this is an effort to try and realign the skill sets and the resources. And one piece of that was creating this new position out of 2 other positions. This aspect came to the board because it's creating a new position requires board approval. But some of the steps you're talking about were part of, there's a bigger reorganization going on, not just this piece. And then to the last issue you raised, my understanding, the plan is that there's going to, this opportunity is going to be open to Pima College staff first to see if there's someone in the college currently who could step into the role so that we do keep it within the college community and local.
Professor Lambert?
No, I just clarify, Jeff, that's on an interim basis. And then we would open it up for a national search. Now, remember, I think in a healthy organization, you're always balancing between promoting people from within the college and bringing new people in from the outside. You have to balance and weigh that. So you're always bringing in new ideas, but at the same time, allowing opportunities for existing people to grow. So we're always balancing that tension. And if we're really committed to diversity, equity, inclusion, we have to be willing to open our positions up for recruitment. And so that's another important part of the equation of why I just don't want to promote someone who's not already an existing administrator into an administrator position without going through a national search. So it allows for the balance and our commitment to DEI as part of our larger focus of our mission.
I understand that, Chancellor Lambert. I guess what I'm going to ask though is that whoever you do, I mean, I'm going to go ahead and vote for this. But what I'm going to ask is that you not hire somebody that's going to be working from out of state. I already know that already exists. Not for this position, but for your new HR person.
Well, let me clarify something on that piece. So I think there's a little misunderstanding on that. We hired our new HR person. She will be moving to Tucson.
Okay.
She's in transition right now. So I'm sorry that you've been misled about that. We expect our administrators and just about all of our employees to live here in Pima County.
Okay, good.
And because of COVID, it has created just this, misbalance around this. So I just I'm sorry that you've been misled on the HR position, but I'm very sensitive to that because these positions are funded by our local taxpayers. So these individuals should live in commutable distance to the college.
Okay, thank you.
Ripley has a comment as well. Ms. Ripley?
Yes, just to kind of add and summarize, I think that it would be good for the board to have a study session or some other offline discussion of the administrative positions, if there are 40 some, and look at their job descriptions and have that and be part of, at least a little part of the reorg process so that we have an understanding, just to address your concerns, Ms. Garcia, and all of us to, exactly where are we going with enrollment coming down and, possible problems with tuition. I think it's just healthy to look at so the board understands fully what precisely are the administrators doing, because they are they're higher level positions than staff. It's where a lot of our budget goes towards, and I think it's incumbent upon us as board members to fully understand that. So I think it would be a good study session.
Okay.
Thank you, Catherine.
Okay. Oh, it looks like Mr. Gonzalez, you also have a comment, and then we'll have a vote. Mr. Gonzalez, go ahead.
Just want to make a comment as well too. References to this position is that one, whoever's going to be hired should be, as I mentioned a while ago, the best capable and most qualified, which is good, but also somebody that knows the community and reflective of the community of the students as well too. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
That's good.
Gonzalez. Okay. So is there any last comments? Okay, hearing none. Mr. Sullivan, if you could read the roll call vote, please.
Sorry, it'll be better if I unmute first. Ms. Ripley.
Yes.
Mr. Klinko.
Yes.
Ms. Garcia.
Yes.
Dr. Hay.
Yes.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes unanimously. Next is our request for future agenda items. Okay, hearing none, our meeting is adjourned. And I will just say we are going to try to create some sort of hybrid, and we're going to look at options for coming back partially in person, either at our next meeting or the meeting thereafter. Okay, thank you very much. Good night.